Well, here I am sitting here in the dark, thinking about the dark forest theory, or hypothesis, however you want to refer to it. I'm not sure if I'm going to upload this or use it as a template to make a different video about it. We'll see how this works. I made a video a while back talking about how if the universe is a simulation, that looking at it that way basically does away with the whole Fermi Paradox idea. And the reason for my having that discussion was that long ago, I finally got around to writing a book that detailed a theory that I had. And long ago, more like say 30 years ago or whatever, I kind of worked it into a science fiction novel that I wrote. And then I ended up, I had gotten away from all my writing and stuff for a while after my mom died, and I was kind of burned out on some Hollywood nonsense after some screenwriting stuff I had done. And the thing that got me back into my writing after all of that, I had been reading some books by some of these so-called new atheists, and one of them in particular talked about how there really wasn't any room in the current, modern scientific theories for an active creator. There's my kitty cat Ari. He's the only one up with me right now. There wasn't any room really in modern scientific theories for an active creator of the kind we find in the Bible, in Judaism and Christianity. Someone who's capable of intervening in daily events and imposing his will, changing things, knowing everything. And that modern scientific theories had kind of made that, if not impossible, at least unnecessary, And after reading all of this and looking at the logical fallacy of some of the, points that they were making and how silly some of it was, I was motivated to write this book just to show that it is possible to put forth a theory that not only makes it possible for there to be an active creator of that sort in our universe, but that in fact there's a way of looking at it that not only makes that possible, but explains a lot of things about quantum physics and so forth and particle behavior that modern science and a lot of the theories that they come up with really bend over backwards and do a lot of mental gymnastics to try and avoid the logical, obvious conclusion. Things like wave-particle duality, things like the dual slit experiment, things like that, where we can look at the photons traveling to us from a star that's, millions or billions of light years away. And actually, in our experiments, the act of observing makes the kind of like the quantum state or quantum wave function of that particle collapse. And it actually is kind of like throwing a dice to see which side or the other of a star, for instance, that's in between us, that particle passed by on its way here. Just like if you're trying to record individual photons and the way they strike a detection plate after they pass through, two slits in a barrier, whether or not you're observing it and trying to measure them actually determines how they behave and whether or not they arrange themselves to have an interference particle like a wave pattern would or behave as individual photons. The observer interacting with that apparatus determines how that particle behaves and which aspect of its dual nature it reveals. And I pointed out in the book I wrote that the easiest way to explain a lot of these things is to look at the universe as what we today would call a simulation or a virtual reality. And not only that, but we have to recognize, and this was the main point, that it's only being displayed at the bare minimum resolution necessary to maintain that illusion of continuity and solidity in any frame of reference. So, what does that mean as far as the Fermi Paradox? If this universe, our reality here on Earth, is a simulation, then all those other things out there that we see, we don't even know if those things have ever actually been fully mapped out or fleshed out, and modeled in complete detail. It's entirely possible that it could be a simulation where all those things have in fact been mapped out in full detail. But if you were going to create a simulation like ours, the world we live in, you wouldn't have to map out all those other things. You would have to understand what the principles were that governed their behavior, establish what the laws of physics were going to be in this reality, and so forth. But if you were doing it and then creating a race of intelligent beings like us here on this one planet, you could just create the local environment here that we are capable of seeing with our naked eye to the level of detail that we are capable of determining it with our naked eye, and that would be it. There would be no need to fully map out every single star, constellation, galaxy, and so forth out there beyond the range of our eyesight's ability to determine it and detect it. Not until we actually got to the point where we developed the technology, telescopes, and so forth to be capable of seeing those things. And even then, you only have to flesh them out to the level of detail that we're capable of measuring with those objects or those, instruments. So because of that, it would be pretty obvious if that's exactly what our universe was, a simulation, and if it was made specifically for us, for whatever reason one might have for making that simulation. I still need to get around to making a video about what possible reasons there would be for someone to create a simulated universe like this, whether it's to study us or certain other things and how we behave. Maybe it's modeled on a real, actual, physically real universe, and the inhabitants of that universe want to run different programs here in this, these alternate realities. Maybe this is only one of many, and just see how things work, or to study their own history and sociology, politics, whatever, science. Maybe they could create a universe just to try and have us try to solve a problem for them that they were having trouble solving in their own universe. But here in this simulation, if it was being run by like a really fast computer or something, they could run, countless iterations of it and watch a time span of thousands of years go by in a very limited amount of time in their real world. So, that's, beyond the scope of this. But someone pointed out in a comment on that video that I did about the, how that would do away with the Fermi Paradox, how there would be no Fermi Paradox, which, for those who aren't familiar with the term, I guess I should explain at this late point in the video. The Fermi Paradox was the idea that if there really are, all these billions and billions of stars out there, and even in just our galaxy, there should be other life forms out there, civilizations, and that if these civilizations are all out there, why haven't we heard from them yet? If this universe is full of life, if life developed here by accident, and which would mean it's apparently pretty fairly easy thing to have happen if it just randomly happened here, and we see so many different forms of life on this planet, it should be happening everywhere, basically, since the laws of physics and biology and so forth and chemistry, be the same basically everywhere in the universe. So where are all these alien civilizations? But someone pointed out to me in one of the comments on that video there's this thing called the dark forest hypothesis or theory, which basically looks at the universe as it's like a dark forest. It's, and all civilizations basically are like hunters, and they either are looking out for other civilizations, other intelligent civilizations, and destroying them, or they're just trying to keep a low profile because they know that there are other evil civilizations out there hunting for them, and so they choose deliberately to not reveal themselves so that they cannot be hunted. But to me, this theory has some really serious logical flaws. First of all, we would have to assume that every single civilization that has ever been born is just absolutely paranoid and bent on destroying everything, and therefore, because they have that mindset themselves, they assume that all the other civilizations that might exist would be the same. We can look at our own civilization and recognize that's probably not likely, Even if there were, say there were 1 billion civilizations in this universe, and even just half of them were that paranoid and the other half weren't, that leaves a lot of civilizations that could be discovered. Our own civilization here on planet Earth, we've actually gone out of our way to try and reveal ourselves to others, and certainly we would have to wonder what kind of cultures existed on those other civilizations, other planets, assuming, of course, we couldn't know exactly what they would be like biologically and so forth. But to achieve a high level of technical sophistication and development, they would have to have discovered many of the same basic principles we have and have some kind of similar intellectual type of profile. We would have to assume, apparently, that none of those other civilizations had any kind of social or religious beliefs like we do in terms of trying to do good and take care of others and not just look out for ourselves and be vicious toward anything that could possibly be a threat to us. So that's the first question I would have. But the second one is, barring some kind of just natural psychological bent that these other civilizations have, what reason would they have for believing that there's some kind of malevolent force out there hunting down civilizations and killing them? Unless someone had already contacted them and told them that. By the time they reached a level where they could have even the thought that that's how things work, they would have already done something in terms of the way they did things on their own planet, the energy they were using, or the radiation, radio signals and so forth that they were emitting and sending out into the galaxy. They would have probably done something by that point that would have revealed their existence before they suddenly decided, oh man, maybe we shouldn't do this and we're going to back off. So that to me would be the main logical flaw with that argument. How would you know that you're living in a dark forest where there's some malevolent force out smacking people down unless someone had already found out about your existence and told you? And if that person was benevolent enough rather than malevolent enough to inform you of that and try to look after you, then right there, that shoots down the whole theory too. Because obviously there's a force for good out there. But I know many of those who want me to stop making inane videos about expat nonsense and so forth probably wonder where this is coming from, since they've never seen this side of my channel or my thoughts before. Might not care that much about this video or the point I'm making and not really into those kind of things. But I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I meant to make a video about it a long, long time ago, and I started thinking again lately about that. I guess there was a book back in 2008, I think, from what I read, a Chinese book called The Three-Body Problem. And they talked a lot, I guess, about the dark forest hypothesis in there. And apparently there was a Netflix series based on it. I haven't read either the books or seen the series, so I'm not really sure exactly what all is involved. I did look it up to try and remember what the name of it was, and I saw some reviews about it that didn't really make it seem like it was the greatest book in terms of the writing and so forth. I don't know if I'll ever get around to reading it or not, but I think apparently that's where, maybe someone had heard about that and got it into their head, because apparently that's a subject in that series of books. Anyways, there we go. That's my main objection to the dark forest hypothesis. First, it assumes that any developed technological civilization would be paranoid and malevolent. And on the other hand, it also would seem to indicate for people to even know that there is some kind of force out there trying to destroy them. They obviously themselves would just have to have no optimism at all. And either that or someone would have had to have told them about it. In which case, that means somebody already knows they exist, so they haven't done a very good job of hiding their existence. Anyways, more on that some other day. Thanks.